Here's a teaching I heard recently on trauma, and a lot of it was really good. I'm just going to read you the post notes to that sermon. This church posted it on Instagram. I'm not going to tell you who it is, but I'm just going to read you some of the follow up stuff. And I'm going to challenge a lot of what's being taught. I think the gospel in most churches is it's like a restricted gospel. It's like, 1% milky. It's just missing that little bit of beef that would take a Christian to the next level, and just they'd be working in power rather than, the teaching is just like, all right, as long as you just sit there and you realize who you are, the enemy just falls. I'm going to show you how that's actually false. Okay. So the first point, remember, these are post notes from the sermon. So point number 1, trauma isn't just what happened to you, it's what was stolen from you. This is really good. So the trauma door, if you will, if I always look at everything like, okay, how would a demon get a hold of a person? How would someone become demonized? Okay. Because we obviously don't want that. So trauma is a huge door. So let's use a kind of terrible example, but if there was a little boy who was 6 years old and he was raped, okay, that's obviously traumatic to the boy, but did he want that to occur? Probably not. So that trauma is unwanted. Something was stolen from that boy, but the demon who will enter or demonize that child because of that trauma door being open doesn't care. They don't care about the intent of the heart, okay? They're not going, well, this isn't fair. We can't really cross that threshold. They will cross that threshold. So great point. Trauma isn't just what happened to you, it's what was stolen from you. So 10 points for that one. Love it. The second one, they get into talking about the Israelites. This is when they were taking over the promised land. So I'm just going to read the point. The Israelites did not lose because of the giants, but because of how they saw themselves. Okay, there's a lot to say here. I think he's talking about the mindset of the Israelites, like the 10 versus the 2, right? Joshua and Caleb were like, all right, let's do this. Let's go in and slay these guys. God's already said, this land is ours. This must not be a problem. He's going to show us a way to fight and win, right? So those dudes were like the warriors. The others were like, we seemed like grasshoppers to them and to us. And it's like, I understand what they're saying. In their eyes, we felt like we were grasshoppers. But then they say something interesting. In their eyes, we were They didn't even see the giants, right? This teacher brings up this point. The giants didn't even see them. So they were just surmising this double fear, like, ooh, we felt like grasshoppers in their sight. And they also saw us as grasshoppers. Moses must have been like, what are you talking about? Did you actually see them? Well, no, just that. Okay. So I think this part here, point number 2, is just talking about their mindset. The Israelites didn't lose because of the giants, but because of how they saw themselves. Got it. So you're defeated in the mind. Good point. Number 3. The blood of Jesus wipes out every record the enemy tries to use against you. Okay, true and false. This sentence would indicate that if we never sin, yep, you're right. So the blood of Jesus wipes out every record the enemy tries to use against you. So as long as you never sin, you're good, right? But when you sin, then what do? So I don't like this type of teaching because people just think, oh, okay, well, Jesus died on the cross. I can just sit here and do nothing, do whatever I want. This is the wrong type of teaching. There's very much an active role that you have to play when living life, okay? Part of life is that you're going to sin. No one's perfect. So when you sin, there's an active role to play. You got to confess that sin. Then you've got to search around or poke around or understand that an entity, you may have opened the door to an entity, and then how are you going to get rid of that? right? Number 4, the python spirit wants to silence your voice, but when you speak God's truth, giants fall. Let's take this in 2 parts. The python spirit wants to silence your voice. Not really. I think it's quite the opposite. The python spirit typically wants to get you off in your prophetic talk. So if you've got a natural prophetic gift, this is where the python spirit loves to demonize you. These are like the victims that he'll go after. If you dabble in witchcraft, that's a main door that python's coming in through. I've never, ever seen him come in through trauma. But this is what's being taught in this series. So that type of information is like, well, I heard it on this podcast and they don't really do deliverance either, but they've got a big following. So I think they're right. I'm going to tell this. This is how things go. So python, number 1, typically is only coming in through witchcraft. Could it come in through trauma? Maybe. I just haven't seen it ever. Okay. Python spirit is the one where Paul casts out in that girl. She had the spirit of divination, but it also goes on to say that spirit's name was Python. So she was like a fortune teller type of witchcraft. So that's how these spirits get in, and particularly Python. So it wants to silence your voice? Not really. It wants you to keep talking. It just wants you to be off. Part 2, but when you speak God's truth, giants fall. This would tell me as long as you speak the Bible, the giant's just going to fall over dead. That doesn't make sense, or David would have been, you know what? Isaiah 54:10 says, and Goliath would have been like, and fallen over dead. But that wasn't the case. If you watch my other video, David knew how to do warfare by learning, by a process, by being efficient, by getting better at it through practice. He had to learn the sling, what stones to use, what leather to use, when to let it go. So there was an active part that David had to play in slaying the giant, and it was a warfare component, not just speaking God's truth.